The international stage is gripped by tension and uncertainty as Iran's nuclear program enters a new era of secrecy and strategic ambiguity. Once open to daily inspections, Tehran has now shuttered its doors to the International Atomic Energy Agency, accusing them of being complicit with the US following a wave of American-Israeli strikes on its nuclear facilities and mounting pressure from the United States. The fate of Iran's enriched uranium stockpile is unknown, fueling speculation and anxiety across global capitals. By keeping its nuclear intentions deliberately unclear, Iran aims to deter adversaries, avoid full-scale conflict, and preserve its uranium enrichment capabilities. But does this policy of nuclear ambiguity serve as a stabilizing force, or does it push the region closer to the brink? We'll discuss this more here on In Depth. I'm Rene.
We're trying to make a deal so that there's no destruction and death.
White House envoy Steve Witkoff is planning to meet Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi in Oslo next week to restart nuclear talks, marking the first direct negotiations since the US launched unprecedented military strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities last month. Axios stated that although the meeting date is not yet finalized and neither side has confirmed it publicly, the talks reflect a thaw in relations following the recent 12-day war between Israel and Iran, which ended in a US-brokered ceasefire. Qatari officials have been mediating behind the scenes. A critical issue for these talks will be Iran's stockpile of highly enriched uranium, currently inaccessible due to damage from the strikes but potentially recoverable. Iran has also recently suspended cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency amid security concerns. On June 22nd of this year, the US launched Operation Midnight Hammer, bombing 3 Iranian nuclear sites, Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan, to cripple Iran's nuclear enrichment capabilities, according to Politico. President Trump declared the strike a success, claiming the facilities were obliterated. No assessments suggest damage may be limited and Iran's program driven underground. In retaliation, Iran fired missiles at the U.S. Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, which were intercepted after Iran gave advance warning, signaling an intent to de-escalate amid the broader Iranian-Israeli conflict. Iran's officials affirm they will continue nuclear enrichment, but deny militarization, rejecting U.S. demands to halt the program. The situation remains tense, with concerns about future Iranian responses and regional stability.
Iran's policy of nuclear ambiguity remains a central strategic tool in its confrontation with the United States and Israel. Following Israeli airstrikes in June targeting key nuclear sites in Isfahan and Natanz, and subsequent US military actions, Tehran has intensified efforts to obscure the true scope of its nuclear program. Iran has ceased cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency, cutting off communication and halting inspections, thereby deepening international uncertainty about its uranium enrichment activities and nuclear stockpiles. Iran's leadership has framed its nuclear program as an inalienable right, refusing to negotiate away uranium enrichment capabilities. Iran's leadership has framed its nuclear program as an inalienable right, refusing to negotiate away uranium enrichment capabilities or missile development. Hardliners have pushed for enrichment levels up to 90% and the development of international ballistic missiles, signaling a readiness to escalate. if pressured. Despite damage from recent strikes, Iran's fortified underground facilities and resilient infrastructure suggest uranium enrichment could resume within months, in spite of the Pentagon's declaration that Iran's nuclear program has been delayed by up to 2 years. The deliberate ambiguity serves multiple purposes. It deters full-scale military escalation by keeping adversaries guessing, preserves Iran's nuclear leverage, and complicates verification efforts by international monitors. However, this risks provoking harsher responses, including potential Iranian withdrawal from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which would further destabilize regional security. As diplomatic efforts remain stalled and the October 2025 deadline for reactivating UN sanctions approaches, Iran's nuclear ambiguity continues to shape a precarious balance, teetering between deterrence and escalation in a volatile Middle East.
To help unpack the complexities of Iran's nuclear ambiguity, we're joined by Ali Atif, researcher at the Egyptian Center for Strategic Studies from Cairo, and Dan Rene, a political researcher from Washington. Thank you both for joining us here on In Depth. Okay, let's start off with you, Sadi. How has Iran's approach to nuclear ambiguity evolved since the recent Israeli-US strikes on its nuclear facilities?
Good afternoon. Since the end of the Iranian-Israeli war on June 24th, there has been a state of uncertainty regarding the Iranian statement regarding resuming the nuclear negotiations. Iran tended to resume the negotiations once, and another times they set some conditions that might not be unacceptable for the West and might hinder the resumption of the talks. And reading the Iranian officials' statement and the Iranian media, we can say that Iran is ready to go back to the negotiation table once again, provided that there are two conditions set by Iran. One, not canceling the nuclear program 100%. And the second condition is a guarantee for Iran that the military strikes will not happen again, whether by Israel or the United States, on the nuclear facilities. I think that Iran is heading towards engaging once again on in the nuclear talks, but given these two conditions. First, that regarding not canceling completely the nuclear program, and this was set even before the 12-day war. But now they added a new condition, which is a guarantee for the U.S. and Israel not to strike the nuclear facilities again. So we can say that there is a state of ambiguity in the course of resuming the nuclear talks, but this can be interpreted as an Iranian desire to go back to the negotiations given these two conditions.
Okay, now Dan, let's ask you here. Now, the Iranians have suspended cooperation with the IAEA, and before that, Trump had scrapped the Obama deal with the Iranians. This is a big setback, I suppose. Now, from Washington's perspective, does this, suspension of the cooperation with the IAEA increase the risk of further conflict?
Well, Iran is trying to keep the world guessing about how close it is to a nuclear weapon. It's a calculated tactic, but it's not very strategic and it's not very smart. Frankly, it's dangerous. The strategy might be buying Iran time, but it's going to continue to erode the trust that the international community has. No responsible nation is going to do this. And frankly, Trump understands this, which is why he has taken a clear signal to say that Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. You can't have this type of diplomacy without having some form of transparency. And, you know, we've seen this playbook before from Iran. They test the limits of what the world will tolerate.
Yes.
And this ambiguity is only going to work if others allow it. And we've seen that the Trump administration is not going to allow it. We saw it when the Trump administration back in 2015 rejected the original the Iran nuclear deal. You know, Iran is trying to manipulate this uncertainty to try to get leverage, but they're seeing that this patience is going to wear out very, very quickly.
But I mean, if you're going to look from the Iranian perspective, or at least what they're saying, is that one of the reasons why they're, temporarily suspending their cooperation with the IAEA is that they believe that, that the IAEA had a hand in in the strikes on the nuclear facilities because they gave out the information to the Americans, basically. But they're still willing to negotiate. Do you think that this is a valid reasoning for doing this?
Well, it's a distraction, I think. I mean, I think what Iran needs to do is think about the choices that it's making. It can continue to hide behind this uncertainty. It can continue to fuel instability or fund proxies, or it can focus on the diplomacy which the world is asking it to do by focusing on peace and trade and prosperity. That would be a much better situation versus trying to find this uncertainty to try to gain leverage. I mean, this strategic patience that we're seeing the world use with the Iran is a true weakness. I mean, think of the irony here. Iran has human capital, natural resources, and it can become an economic powerhouse. But instead of investing in healthcare and trade and all the things that can make the country prosperous, it's its own obstacle to progress. It's its own obstacle to prosperity by funding, or at least trying to fund, a nuclear program by engaging in terrorism activities. And instead of looking at this as nuclear ambiguity that we're talking about here today, Iran should join the international community, and that path starts with being open and being transparent and being honest about the ambitions that it has.
Okay, let's ask you, Ali. There, how do you characterize the Iranian nuclear doctrine currently? Is the policy of the nuclear ambiguity a form of strategic restraint or in preparation for further escalations? And do you agree with Dan there that this is going to probably escalate things and the Iranians should invest more in civil programs rather than nuclear ambitions?
I think that Iran seeking to acquire a nuclear weapon is very baffling. One day before the war, we could have said that Iran actually wants to acquire a nuclear weapon, but there is a question, a very interesting question, that is during the past few weeks, in line with the war, Iran had 4.8 kilograms of enriched uranium, and Iran was able through that to produce around 7 nuclear bombs. Why wouldn't Iran go through with the production of these weapons and these bombs? Is Iran really seeking to acquire a nuclear weapon, or are they using this file as a political pressuring card on the West, such a like the other regional issue of the missile program? And Iran seeking to acquire this nuclear bomb became in the recent days a doubtable and questionable issue. Now they are using this card as a deterrence, and this was evident recently that they are using it for deterrence, a pressuring card no more. And the recent war with Israel might push the Iranian regime to change its nuclear doctrine and to stop wanting to acquire a nuclear weapon. This was the first direct war with Israel since the establishment of the Iranian regime in 1979. 79, and it highlighted the weaknesses and vulnerabilities in the Iranian defense systems, and that's why I think that the Iranian public might be pushed by these recent circumstances and the military equations that highlighted the Iranian vulnerabilities to change its nuclear doctrine and its goal to acquire a nuclear weapon. So it was very important to highlight the internal military weakness inside Iran, and this might actually push Iran to stop to acquire a nuclear weapon soon.
Okay, then over to you now. How has the US administration interpreted Iran's ambiguous signals about the nuclear capabilities since the June attacks, given that there are reports that Steve Witkoff is to meet with the foreign minister of Iran to discuss or negotiate things forward?
Right. Well, it's incredibly simple the way the United States is looking at this. Iran is never going to be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. It will not be allowed to develop one. This isn't just a U.S. policy or a red line that Israel has drawn. This is a global imperative. The world's most dangerous weapons cannot be in the hands of one of the world's most unpredictable regimes. If Iran were to have a nuclear weapon, that's a threat that doesn't stay regional. It becomes an actual global crisis. Mm-hmm. And so by having this uncertainty around the program, it might delay or buy time, but it doesn't change the end result. That's why I'm very surprised that Iran is continuing with this ambiguity. Because whether it be through diplomacy or whether it be through stronger measures that we saw here a few weeks ago, this line is going to be enforced. The Trump administration made that point with complete clarity. And so, this is a situation where, the secrecy and ambiguity is not serving Iran's interests well. Instead, it should be to be transparent.
Could this possibly just be a negotiating tactic to sort of have some sort of equal footing when it comes to negotiating, what they're going to do moving forward?
Well, if it is, it's got to be one of the worst negotiating tactics ever, because it is simply, why would you want to negotiate with someone that is out there trying to destroy you? I mean, instead of, you're not going to attract a whole lot of partners that way. Again, there are many, many alternatives that Iran has here. Lots of opportunities for economic investment, lots of opportunities to build prosperity and be partners with the world instead of being a threat to the world. And it's very simple. I mean, if it wants to negotiate, it should negotiate to try to find ways to bring investment into the country, negotiate to find ways to bring more strategic partnerships into the country, and further develop its people and its contributions to the world, instead of its contributions to trying to destroy its adversaries.
Okay, Ali, over to you now. There's evidence that Iran has moved the enriched uranium stockpile to undisclosed locations. Now, what strategic advantage does this provide for them? And do you agree with Dan there that this is not necessarily the right move to negotiate the path forward? And would the international community consider this a threat?
In fact, regarding this question, the possible implications of Iran acquiring nuclear weapons will change a lot of the international order and the regional order also in the Middle East, because this will mean for the United States of America first that one of its opponents will have the nuclear weapon. Also, Iran having this nuclear weapon will push different Middle East states to also acquire nuclear weapons, and this will change the concept of balance and regional security and the balance of international order. Iran having this weapon will mean the change of the international order and the regional system, as different Middle East region will also want to acquire one. regarding Iran transferring its stockpile of enriched uranium, it is not affirmed yet. We are not sure about it, but Iran might have. And we also Donald Trump's statements regarding the airstrikes on the nuclear sites, Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan, that they have already obliterated the nuclear program. These statements might be actually true, and Iran may want to divert the attention by that they have moved their stockpiles to say that the airstrikes were not that influential. The Iranian stressing that they have moved their uranium stockpile might be a political maneuver to win new pressuring card on the negotiation table soon. These news are not affirmed yet, not verified yet, but these are pressuring cards and political gains for Iran. They want to tell to the United States and the world that these airstrikes were not that influential.
Well,
And
Ms. Ali, I'm sorry if I cut you off there, but Ms. Ali, I mean, you talked about the airstrikes and that statements may be true from the Trump administration that they, quote, obliterated the nuclear facilities or the nuclear sites. Now, since we're talking about Iranian ambiguity, there's also ambiguity on, or something is unclear when it comes to the strikes. So there are a lot of statements coming out from Washington, whether it be from the administration or other officials within the U.S. government as well, some saying that they set them back a few months, some saying they set them back a few years, and then Trump saying they obliterated these sites. What's true here is unclear. Am I correct in saying that? From both sides.
These statements are contradicting from Iran and from the United States of America. Each of them have their own interests. The United States want to stress the influence of their airstrikes on the nuclear sites, and that's why they stressed that the recent airstrikes obliterated the nuclear program. The U.S. administration has an interest to stress the complete destruction of the nuclear program, and also Iran has an interest in negating these statements. And we see here both parties issuing these contradicting statements to protect their interests on the negotiation tables to be held soon. No matter how long we are gonna wait, the negotiations will be resumed eventually, and they both have interests in resuming these talks. And in general, this contradiction in statements regarding the extent of destruction in the nuclear program stems from the mutual desire of assuring their internal public opinion in both countries. Trump wants to announce his success inside America, that he was able to destroy the nuclear program, unlike the Joe Biden administration that was not able to destroy the program. He wants to achieve this accomplishment, this political accomplishment inside the United States. Iran, on the other hand, wants to say that this is not true. This ambiguity state is reasonable and understandable when we look at the future of the negotiation or the nuclear talks.
Okay, then if we can get your perspective here. Now, we discussed with Ali there the ambiguity or the unclear, things are not clear when it comes to the US statements as well coming out about the strikes, and the Iranians are being quite ambiguous when it comes to the nuclear material and where it is. Now, do you believe that this is possibly a negotiating tactic to give one party or the other the upper hand? And if it's not, do you think that this is going to cause problems in the future for US or Israeli plans to, say, strike Iranian nuclear material or facilities?
Yeah, I think that there is more clarity here than the world is giving either side credit for. When it comes to these strikes and when it comes to the war that essentially just ended, you can bomb and destroy a lot of things, but you cannot destroy desire with a bomb. You cannot destroy knowledge with a bomb. And so, if Iran, even if its facilities were set back by 3 months or 3 years, ideally, what this shows and what the U.S. and Israeli action should have shown is that Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. And so that should be the clarity that comes from this, not whether it was set back by 3 months or 3 years. It should be come to the negotiating table. Let's talk about the ways to bring this as a path forward. There's going to be pilots, hundreds of them that participate in the operation that are going to be honored today in Washington, D.C. as part of the Independence Day celebration. President Trump has made it abundantly clear, as has the defense secretary and others, that Iran's nuclear capabilities have been, and the word that is continually used is obliterated. And so I think that is abundantly clear. It is something that is in no way ambiguous at all. The fact is that ideally this obliteration, regardless if it's 3 months, 3 years, or whatever the length of time is, should be what takes away that desire for Iran to develop these weapons of destruction and instead come to the negotiation table, focus on diplomacy. Let's get together with openness, honesty, and have a genuine desire for peace. Stop being your own obstacle to progress, I think, is what the president and the American people are saying to Iran these days.
Okay, so if this is the path forward, I mean, if things go smoothly and the negotiations go well, do you think that this is the path for President Trump to win the Nobel Prize?
Well, that's something that he really wants, I think. I mean, I do see that his desire to become this peacemaker is something that we're seeing in a very real way. We've seen a peace deal with the Democratic Republic of Congo. We saw a quick end to some hostilities between India and Pakistan. He is still working very closely to try to find a path forward with Russia and Ukraine. And so by finding a way to bring Iran to a negotiating table and hopefully showing them a better path where it can not only protect its people, but have a better grip on power when it comes to prosperity. Prosperity is good for everyone. The end game for the U.S. in terms of safety and security is not going to change. What can change is Iran's own prosperity and status in the world, and that's something that could be a very positive for them. I do hope that this negotiation can be something that turns out very well for them. Again, they have a big choice to make.
They do want to negotiate,
if they make the right one, it can be good for them.
Yeah, they do want to negotiate. They don't want, constant war and sanctions. I'm sure that's something that they want.
That's not good for anyone. Agreed. Yes.
Okay, Ali, if we can get your perspective here, some Iranian officials have called for further escalations, including higher enrichment levels and missile development. How real is this threat? Is this again a tactic to sort of set the scene for the negotiations that we're not going to back down?
First, I would like to comment on a point stated by your honorable guest that Iran cannot in the future acquire a nuclear weapon. I think that the U.S. Endeavors and as well as the Israeli endeavors to prevent Iran from acquiring a nuclear bomb are so far successful, but the extent of its success in the future is questionable because for too many reasons. First, which that the confidentiality of nuclear Iranian sites, they cannot all be detected. Iran was that close to acquire a nuclear weapon before the recent strikes. So the matter of Iran not acquiring a nuclear weapon in the future is very questionable. They might not have it now, but they can actually have one in the future because of the confidentiality and classification of the nuclear sites. The nuclear inspectors themselves are still detecting new nuclear sites, and even the
Well, sir,
percentage of
if you
uranium
could,
enrichment is
we get the
now
point there, but if you could just get to the actual answer of the question here, is this a tactic or not? Because we're almost out of time, so we can get final answer here.
I think that the uranium enrichment matter and the suspension of cooperation with the IAEA as a uranium rejection and response to the recent strikes by the United States and Israel, I think eventually they are all going to sit at the negotiation tables. Once again, Iran wants only to gain some privileges and pressuring cards. And this was evident through the past few days.
Okay, thank you both for joining us. Unfortunately, we can't talk a bit more about this, but maybe in the future we'll do that. Thank you, Ali Atif and Dan Rene, for your insights, and thank you for your analysis as well. Iran's nuclear ambiguity remains a double-edged sword, deterring conflict while risking miscalculation. As tensions persist, only careful diplomacy can navigate this uncertain path. This brings us to the end of this episode of In Depth. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more here on Qnews.